Hello everyone, my name is Chris, welcome to my hobby blog. Today we are doing day 15 of Spooktober. So we are halfway through the month, roughly. And what did I watch today? I watched Don't Torture a Duckling, otherwise known as Non si Vizia un Papalino. I think that's how you say it. I did my best Italian pronunciation, but this movie is basically about a rural small town where like boys are getting killed and no one knows who it is. Lots of accusations start flying, and I legitimately did not care for this movie for a while. This was a rewatch that I did, and I was just it's definitely a movie where there's not really much going on during the movie. There's a lot of talking back and forth throughout, the scenes. And we get, scenes of murder every 20 minutes or so. But between all that, it's your typical Giallo. I mean, lots of talking, lots of investigating the murders and all that. But I actually watched a interview on this release where they interviewed Mikkel Coven, who is the author of La Dolce Morte, which is actually a book I've been meaning to get. It's a book all about the Giallo genre and talking about how it's a part of what he calls the vernacular cinema, which is like, this is kind of where all the mainstream movies are, and there's this through stream of like nobody in the mainstream knows these movies, and they're just not even cognizant of this entire genre. But us film nerds and fans of cinema, we know it really well. And watching him talk about this movie was just really enlightening. And this guy really knows his shit. Like, watching that interview, it's like a 30-minute interview, by the way, and it felt like a minute. I was just sitting there just completely blown away by everything he was saying. I mean, I was very just like, okay, whatever. Like, I don't get the appeal. But he explains the appeal. And it's basically a result of American, I guess, funding after the World War II. And he talks about how, there's just a bunch of new jobs in the north of Italy. And he was really, like, suspicious before finding this out about, like, why are all the spaghetti westerns, like, glorifying the South. And from his American perspective, and this is my perspective too, this is why I have a hard time with westerns, that they always glorify the South, the Confederacy, and I don't like that at all. And he made a point that just really kind of made me sit back and kind of think about it in a totally different new light. And he said, it's not America, north-south, that they are glorifying, but it's the southern rural areas of southern Italy that they are glorifying. And so throughout the entire film, this is really the only Giallo movie that takes place in a rural setting. There's like one other, and he mentions it, but like I've never heard of it. Like, I know Giallo pretty well, I like to think. I mean, aside from the one title he mentioned in the rural divide, I guess, in the Giallo genre, I knew all the titles that he talked about. There was a few that I hadn't seen yet, like Torso and Woman in a Lizard Skin, which is the Lucio Fulci movie he made before this one. And it was just insane when he said that, and I was like, oh, okay. And then he talks about how in this movie they really tackle the rural versus modernizing environments that were happening in the 60s and 70s, where, all this funding was coming in from America mostly to kind of vitalize the Italian economy. And so they tackled that in this movie, and they also tackle the like modernity destroying, antique environments or whatever. Where in the beginning of the movie, it starts off with a highway just cutting through all these, environments where if the highway wasn't there, it would be just like hills. But because of this highway system, and this is something that I didn't really think about until this movie, is that, or until that video essay or essay interview, is that this highway enables a lot of outsiders to come into this village where all these boys are getting killed by somebody. And so there's a lot of like tension with outsiders throughout this entire movie. And it ends up being an insider. And that was just blew me away when he talked about that, because I was very like, I don't get this movie. I don't like it. It's fine. I like the end. I mean, we have a Lucio Fulci death where someone's face is getting like ripped open as he's falling like off a cliff. And I think that was, I mean, the guy in the interview talked about this too. I think that was Lucio Fulci, flexing his, anti-religion views. But yeah, this movie had it all. The movie itself is still like fine, but I think it's far more fun to look at all these themes and looking at how this is different from other Giallo films. And it blew me away watching that one interview. I mean, I just watched it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch like one of these, special features on this disc. And the guy talks about how this is another point that I really liked, is that Giallo films are not meant to be studied or really looked at like at all when it came out back in the 70s. And he talks about how this movie was basically like the Grindhouse film circuit of the 70s, around the same time in America, where people would show up and they're distracted watching this movie. They're, doing drugs, they're having sex, all this stuff. And he says that that's what La Dolce Vita was all about, which is like a, not higher class, but an upper class audience who are not even paying attention. Every 20 minutes there's a kill, and they're watching the movie when the kill is happening, but aside from that, they're not really paying attention. They're having sex, they're using drugs, they're drinking, they're talking to the partner beside them. And he says that because of film collecting and boutique Blu-ray companies, because this was a really recent interview. It doesn't say what year, but this was released back in 2017. So, I mean, Criterion, Vinegar Syndrome, Arrow, all these companies. He argues, all these movies that weren't meant to be studied are now being studied. And you can find all these little things that really... what am I thinking of? Where it really elevates the movies that are being studied. Because usually, like, case in point, this movie, I did not care for it when I first watched it. I was like, okay, it's good. I really like it, all that. And it wasn't until someone started pointing out all these little things about this movie that I was like, this is kind of awesome now. And this is what happened with Wax Mask, too, which I talked about on the Withering Watch pile with Leon. Is that Wax Mask, this 1990s Giallo movie with Dario Argento, Lucio Fulci, like, at the helm, it shouldn't have worked. It was outside of its time. Like, Giallo was dead by the 90s, at least. Even the 80s, you don't even see many Giallo movies. And so, for a 1997 movie, I was alive while that movie, like, was coming out. It shouldn't have worked. And this movie... This is why watching supplements are so important to me. Because I can really just immerse myself in a movie. And really look into it, study it, all that. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. This is like my longest thing, and took no problem. But, yeah, I think that's it. I haven't seen many Lucio Fulci movies. This is a total blind spot for me. I'm more of a Dario Argento and random Giallos that I've seen. I think this is the only Lucio Fulci... Well, I've seen Zombie. I have seen City of the Living Dead. So, like, 3 movies out of the 40 or whatever he made. So, yeah, that's my review. Thank you all for watching.